Alright, let's start today's video. Well, one of them. As one might be able to guess, I'm still trying to clear out the debt because I didn't make enough videos last week. So let's talk about capitalism and cooperation. Now, what inspired this video was watching a video comparing the US and USSR and noting how, while the US cooperated to achieve certain goals, the USSR faced a lot of internal competition, making it hard to actually achieve it. For those curious, yes, I'm referring to the establishment of the internet for the Soviet Union. Now, see, when people think of capitalism, they tend to think of competition, and this makes sense. A big part of capitalism is competition. But the thing is, the idea isn't solely based on it. Capitalism relies on individual choice and private property at its base. Anything beyond that can be acceptable so long as that is maintained. And voluntary cooperation often benefits capitalism so as to maintain efficiency. Think about it. When you form a friend group and, say, work together on a project, that benefits you. It's the same concept with larger projects. Oftentimes, people work together to achieve something because they get something out of it. And that recognition of self-interest is inherent in capitalism. And so, to maintain efficiency, people will cooperate. It is not exclusively competitive. That said, definitely there is competition. And see, a reliance purely on competition can create issues, even if the competition is important to have. Let's face it, if everyone's trying to fight each other over every little thing, you're not going to get a lot done. Think of a bandit. If it's just pure competition, you're going to have issues. And this isn't to make a dog-eat-dog capitalism comparison, but rather to point out that this image a lot of people have in their heads of pure capitalism being pure competition is wrong. Pure capitalism is pure private property and individual choice. That is what it is at its core. Cooperation is still allowed. People will still work together. It's just that people will choose to work together. They won't be forced into it. That is the difference. And so, naturally, capitalism has cooperation. Pure competition does not help because you can't build anything when it's no holds barred, everyone trying to do whatever they can to win. What that does is just lead to people self-sabotaging in an effort to constantly one-up each other. And so all societies will naturally have to reconcile these things. They'll all have to deal with competition and cooperation to varying degrees. So if they aren't built for one or the other, they will be destroyed by such. To give an example, using the USSR, they tried to essentially force cooperation throughout the entire aspect of society. It was a lot of involuntary cooperation, but cooperation nonetheless. But the problem comes, people are still going to be competitive. There's still going to be self-interest at play and people trying to push for their own interests. But if there's no way for that to be beneficial because everything's supposed to be top-down organized, what ends up happening? Well, you see issues. You see people clashing and making things less efficient in order to maintain their status or grow it. Using the Soviet internet as an example, there was a lot of corruption involved within the Soviet state because what it essentially was doing was saying, alright, you guys tell us your quotas, how much you actually achieved, did you do it better or worse? And they would go to the people who were actually making the stuff and say, alright, what are the numbers that you actually produced and did it meet what you were planning on? And they would use that as basically a gauge to see how well things were doing. Well, if they kept saying, hey, we're doing great here, we're doing well, then that would indicate a positive note, and so the state would reward you. And you can see the perverse incentives start to tick away because there was very little check for lying, especially because, well, it looked good for a minister to say, yeah, everyone in my department's doing really well. They exceeded their quotas, they got what they needed to do done, and everything worked out. But once you try to introduce a computer system that automatically keeps track of such things, well, then you have an issue because you can't lie anymore. And so the Soviet Union, unable to properly cooperate because they focused only on it, without any way to make competition effective for their state's organization, in effect found the competition merge elsewhere in the bureaucracy itself. And that bureaucracy crushed it because it wasn't built for that competition. It was built to be cooperative, and so it couldn't last. The US, on the other hand, had competition as a mainstay of its organization. Excuse me. Even with the New Dealers constantly regulating the market, which, let's face it, they did, the United States still heavily leaned into competition. So, if you want to be competitive, compete. Go to the market. Start a business. Do what you want. Or if you want to work together and cooperate, there were ways to do so. There was an alley to do so in the state. And so from there, what we see is that cooperation and competition are both sustained within the capitalist framework. They were both sustained, and so when it was time for things to get competitive, for self-interest to take the wheel, the state would usually allow it. And when it was time to cooperate, the state could, and the people by extension. That is the thing. Capitalism is not just some constant competition. Rather, it's the constant choice of what is best for you and those you care about, which often leads to competition and cooperation, depending on circumstance. Capitalism is not exclusively one thing or the other. What it is simply a way of saying, hey, you're self-interested, so how do you want to use that to achieve something else? How do you want to grow your wealth? How do you want to support your family, etc., etc.? That is where capitalism shines. That may not make much sense to you, but yeah, I do deeply apologize if so. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Have a good one.